Alright, so my mission today is to get you sounding like a native speaker. So to do that, I'm firstly going to go through each of the alphabet in Pinyin, which is a phonetic labeling system for Mandarin Chinese. And I'll be teaching you how each one is pronounced. Now I'm going to go through everything in quite some detail, so if it feels overwhelming for you, then just take everything with a grain of salt, alright? So let's get started. Now most of the consonants sound just like in English. So these include ba, da, fa, ga, ka, la, ma, na, pa, sa, ta, ya, and za. So I'm just putting the a after each consonant so you can hear clearly how it's pronounced in the word. Now there are some consonants that are pronounced slightly differently. For example, the letter C. This is pronounced like TS in English. So for example, if you think of the word net, okay, t. So if we had CA in Pinyin, this would be pronounced ca, ca. Now the letter H is quite interesting because there is no consensus about how it's meant to be pronounced. But I would say that it lies on a continuum. So on one hand of the continuum is our aspirated H, which is how we would say it in English, ha, ha. And on the other hand of the continuum, we have the sound ha, ha, which you can think of a bit like the Achlaut in German, or say the letter H in Russian. And I would say that the most common way of pronouncing the letter H in Mandarin Chinese is H, is a very soft H sound. So H, H. For example, H, H, Hai, Hai, Han. Han. Another consonant is the letter W. This is pronounced like the letter W in front of O and U. Wo, wu, but pronounced like the letter V in front of A and E. Va, ve. Now people from the south would quite often say everything with the letter W, but I would say that in standard Mandarin it is pronounced va, veng, vang, vei, ven, van, and so on, while wo and wu is pronounced with the W. Now the letter R is very interesting because a lot of English speakers who come to learn Mandarin, they speak really well and you can't really tell that they have an accent until they get to a word which starts with the letter R. Now it's a very subtle difference, so I'll just show you with some examples. In English, for example, we could say the word run, as in running, run. But if we attached the letter R to the same vowels in Chinese, we would get ran, ran. So I'll just slow this down so you can see the difference, okay? Run, run, ran, ran. Okay, so it's to do with the shape of the mouth. You can think of the R in Chinese a little bit like SH. For example, if you thought of the word shan and then just changed it slightly, ran, shan, run. And now we come to some problematic consonants, and these are J, Q, and X. So to pronounce these consonants, all we have to do is put the teeth relatively close together. It doesn't have to be biting down each other, but they should be fairly close. And then we put the tongue to the bottom teeth, to the tip of the tongue touching the bottom teeth. And then we lift up the middle of the tongue to meet the roof of the mouth. And then for the letters J and Q, we build up air behind the tongue. And then we release it as the tongue comes down. So for example, jie, jie, jie. And the teeth actually comes apart with that movement as well. Qie, qie. So the letter J is the voiced version of the consonant. So the voice comes on right at the beginning of the consonant. J, J. While the letter Q is the unvoiced version. So Qie, Qie. So the voice comes on after the consonant is pronounced. Now the letter X is pronounced in exactly the same place as Q and J. But all the difference is that we don't have a build-up of air and a release when the consonant is pronounced. It simply sounds like air is escaping. So this one we can continue sounding the consonant. But with Q and J, t, j, it's over, okay? So in technical terms, Q and J are plosive consonants, while X is a fricative. Ch, j, x. And then we come to some compound consonants, j, ch, and sh. So ZH, j, CH, ch, and SH, sh. Now, ZH together, you just have to remember that it's not z. Okay, so think of the word judge, and we'll get there. And now we come to the vowels. So the letter A is just pronounced a, like in the word father. A. The letter O doesn't really appear by itself very much at all, except in front of the consonants bo, po, mo, for, and wo. And in all of these cases, we could write a U in front of the O and it would still sound the same. So bo, po, mo, for, wo, but the U is not written there. Now the letter E is probably the most tricky of all of them because it's pronounced in so many different ways. But by itself, it is pronounced a little bit like a schwa. Now, if you don't know what a schwa is, think of the word about. This is a schwa, except in Chinese, is a little bit different from a schwa because the tongue is further back in the mouth. So it's further up and towards the back of the throat. So the root of the tongue is a little bit perked up. Okay? L, n, h, g, zh, s, okay, it's quite a weird sound. The letter I is pronounced very small, okay? So think of the letters Y, E, E. Yi, yi, bi, li, xi, ji, and so on. But there are some consonants where I doesn't sound like an I at all. So these consonants are Z, C, S, ZH, CH, SH, and R. And after these consonants, I sounds like a continuation of the consonant. So for example, ZI, Z, Z, CI, C, C, S, S. So with Z, C, and S, the I has the same sort of sound. Okay, and it's pronounced very much where the consonant is pronounced, except we have to move the tongue slightly, okay? So the tongue doesn't stay stuck to the roof of the mouth. Now, if we didn't move the tongue at all, z, 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 okay, you get a lot of buzzing. There's a lot of sibilance in that sound. Now, all I have to do is just move the tongue off from the roof of the mouth, where it's touching the mouth for the consonant, by a millimeter. And then we get z, s, s, okay? There is no more buzzing in that sound. Now, zh, ch, and sh have the same concept here. but the I is just in a slightly different place from z, c, s, because the consonants are pronounced slightly differently. So zh, ch, sh. So if you get the consonants right, then the vowel will fall into the right place as well. And again here, we're moving the tongue slightly away from the roof of the mouth. Zh, ch, sh. Now the letter R, r, this one is a true continuation of the consonant. So the tongue doesn't move at all from where the consonant is pronounced. R, r. Okay? Now the letter U is pretty straightforward, okay? It's just U, for example, bu, pu, lu, zu, cu, and so on. But we also have another version of the U with an umlaut on it, or the two dots. Now this is pronounced yu, so in the U shape of the mouth, but with the tongue in the E position. So u, yu. Okay, so the tongue is really high and forward in the mouth. Now one thing that you have to watch out for here is that after the consonants Y, J, Q, and X, the U doesn't have a dot on it, but this is the way that it's pronounced. So it's not pronounced you, okay? Yu, ju, chu, shu. But because that is the only way that it is pronounced, the two dots are simply not written. And now we come to some vowel combinations. So AO is ao, ao. AI, I, I. EI, A, A. IE, yeah, yeah. You, you. Ya, ya. O, o. Wa, wa. Wo, wo. Now this one is interesting because sometimes it's not written with the U with the two dots on it, okay? But this is the way that it is pronounced. The pronunciation for this, you can think of a lot of French words which have the spelling I, E, and U, okay? For example, in Chinese, the word lieu sounds very similar to the French word lieu, except you do open the mouth slightly wider than you do in French. Lieu. Yeux sounds like the French word yeux, as in les yeux. Dieu, tu, sur, and nu. Oui. This is a bit tricky because the I doesn't sound like the I in other words, so it's not we, okay? It's we. Think of it a little bit like, for example, in the word question, okay? We. Obviously, it depends on how you say that word, question, okay? Because some people do open it out quite widely, question, and in that case, it doesn't work. So if you go question, we, okay, that works. Yao, yao. So this is just like YAO, and Y, and this sounds like WAI. Now we get into some sounds which end in N and NG. An, yin. Now with IN and ING, you have to watch that in Chinese, it actually sounds like YIN and YING. Yin, okay, and this also happens after a consonant. So for example, lin, ling. Now in English, we get used to pronouncing lin, ling, okay? But in Chinese, lin, ling, it's like there's a Y after the L. Win. This sounds a little bit like the word win in English, okay? Win. For example, kun. Now the way to remember this is that T-U-N, twin, sounds a little bit like the English word twin, okay? But there is actually no W after Y, J, Q, and X. So yun, yun, jun, chun, shun. Okay, there is no W. Yan, yan, wan, wan. And now ng, ang, ang. You can think of, for example, the word lang, lang. Eng is, the E here is again pronounced like a schwa, so so schwa and then the nasality at the end. Ying, ying, okay, we've already covered this one already. Ong. So you can think of, for example, the French word long, but the difference here is that in French, the nasality comes right after the consonant, so long, long. But in Chinese, it comes at the end of the word, so long, long. Okay? Now the way that we say long in Chinese is actually chang, so another ang word, chang. And we also have yang, yung, wang. Now with words that end in n or ng, we have to be careful, because in Chinese, we do not liaise the end of one word to the beginning of the next word if it begins with a vowel. For example, in English, we have an apple, okay? An apple. It's not an apple, okay? You attach the n to the beginning of the next word because apple begins with a vowel. This never happens in Chinese. And I'll show you some examples. 嫦娥, 嫦娥, okay? So it's not 嫦娥, okay? 长安, 长安. So here it's even less. It's not 长安, okay? 天安门, 天安门. It's not 天安门, okay? Which is how you would say it in English. If you did, it would sound like 天南门, which are two completely different words. So you can think of it as if there is no N at all in the middle. 天安门, 真爱, 真爱. Pinyin, pinyin. So if you attach the N before the Y, it would sound like pinyin, which is a different word, okay? Pinyin. Great! It might be great for you to find out that we have just covered all the rules that you need to know to be able to pronounce any word in Chinese. Apart from the tones, so we'll discuss that now. So there are 4 tones in Mandarin Chinese. There's a high tone, a rising tone, a dipping tone, and a falling tone, And these are expressed with diacritics above the vowels in Pinyin. Now, you might know already that the same pronunciation for a word will have different meanings when a different tone is there. So for example, 尖 is a different word from 见, okay? But in actual fact, most of the time, the same pronunciation with the same tone will have lots of different meanings as well. Now, this can get quite confusing, and so you might be thinking, all right, I need to get down and really learn the tones, and I need to be able to pronounce every tone correctly. So listen to me carefully here. When we're speaking, we're not actually using the tones to understand what each other are saying, okay? In fact, most of the time when we are speaking using the language in everyday life, we can speak in complete monotone and someone else will still understand us 100%. So we're not actually using the tones as a way of understanding the language. And another thing that goes to show this is that with regional accent differences, especially in northern China, often the first point of difference are the tones. Okay, so if you went from the accent of one town to the next, you'd find that the difference often is in the way that they pronounce different tones, and sometimes it gets very different. But can we still understand each other? Of course we can. And that's because we don't actually understand the language from just the tones, okay? We understand the language mainly from the syntax or the word order, and also from the consonants and the vowels. And so for a learner or a beginner, I think it's more important that you become familiar and understand and practice the consonants and the vowels, because that is how we understand the language, through the vowels. And you will start to build up the muscle memory needed to be able to articulate these words, okay? And later on, you can add whatever tone you want, okay? It doesn't really matter then, because you've got what it takes to actually pronounce the words. Now, it's also worth noting that words with the same tone are often pronounced with slightly different tones when they're used in the same sentence. Take this phrase as an example. 我试了一遍，又一遍. This means I tried it again and again. And you'll notice that here there are 4 words with a falling tone. 试, 遍, and 又. Okay, now listen carefully. 我试了一遍，又一遍. All 4 of these words are pronounced in a slightly different register of the voice, and it's all to do with the meaning that it holds in the sentence. 我试了一遍，又一遍. So you can hear that 试 and 又 are pronounced slightly higher than 遍. Another aspect to be aware of is that when we're speaking at a natural speaking pace, not every character gets its full tone. So only the tones which are stressed, or the words which are stressed, get their full tone, while most other words are pronounced with very little tone and sometimes no tone at all. And if you did pronounce every single word in a sentence with tone, you'd sound a little bit like this.
我举笔二人，真不知如何是好。
此乃分内之事，何足挂齿。
Now, when you first start speaking, you won't be able to get every single tone right, okay? So aim for fluency in the sentence. I think that's probably more important. Finally, I have some tips for you to sound natural when learning any language. Firstly, don't stress your articulators too much, okay? So when you first start learning, you'll be quite tense inside the mouth, but this doesn't help. We try and aim for naturalness when speaking. Secondly, don't put logic into pronunciation. So you'll look at a word on the page and it will be spelled in a certain way, and you think that it would be pronounced in this way, but always listen to how it's pronounced and don't just take it at face value. And lastly, don't be afraid that other people won't understand you if you're pronouncing things correctly. For example, to say that's the truth in Mandarin is 这是事实, okay? 这是事实. And that's how we would say it. And when you first learn that, you might think, no one will understand me if I say it like that, and you'll probably try and separate out every syllable. 这是事实. But the truth of the matter is, 这是事实 is actually how we say it. And if you said it like that correctly, then we would be able to understand you. So be patient and trust in yourself and practice pronouncing things. Thanks for watching pronunciation lesson number 1 for Mandarin Chinese. And I promise that in another pronunciation lesson, I will cover some things in even greater detail and also talk about the infamous 儿化音.